Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of The Hard Choice, Simple Steps for Showing Up. My name is Brad Draper. I am your host. I am grateful to be with you today. Man, my nose itches. My goodness. Take care of that before we get going, you know. Things happen in life. You adapt, you adjust, you move forward. I had this cool experience the other day that I wanted to share with you. I was pondering about it while on my walk. So I was doing active cardio, active recovery today, which means I'm on a road bike, I'm on a mountain bike, or I'm walking. And isn't it amazing? So often of these podcast episodes come from those moving meditations. It is a time for me to think. It is a time for me to ponder. I journal a lot. I listen to podcasts and books. Sometimes I jam out to some music. Let's rock on metal. And sometimes I just have silence. And I'm just thinking, especially on my walks. Oftentimes, it is just silence and me recording in my journals as I'm walking, thinking, pondering, asking questions, answering said questions, which, by the way, is the definition of thinking, and just simply moving forward. Last night, I had the opportunity, which I have every Wednesday, to go to Utah State Corrections, so UDC. Utah Department of Corrections, to the prison. And my wife and I teach a communications course. My wife is no longer going with me because she is on maternity leave. She's very close to our daughter being born, and we decided probably not optimal to have a baby in prison. Don't want to do that. So she stays home. And while there, we were discussing having impact on those around you. We were discussing being present, being vulnerable, being curious, asking intentional, insightful questions, learning about other people, and just serving. And I was pondering about this as well, along with my walk, and how much joy I have right now. While there is so much calamity, so much chaos, financially, we're getting rocked because we are 22-ish months into our startup and still moving forward. And I'm super grateful for the team that we have and for the opportunities that we have. And we're still serving and still loving. And that is what brings joy. That is what brings happiness. Monetary gain, materialistic gain, those things can encourage you to choose to be happy, but they don't actually create happiness. And how exuberant it was to be there last night. And I so look forward to going to the prison every week and to teach the course and to see real change and real impact in other people. Little did I know when I set a goal to be on a stage and speak from stages and to influence other people 3 years ago, or I guess 3.5 years ago. Little did I know that stage was going to be a prison, a literal prison, and standing in front of 18 to 25 women at any given time every week and teach for a little over an hour, and how much that would impact me. So service is a huge thing, but that was a little side tangent because I just want to talk about it. But what I really want to talk about is what I was pondering about on my walk. I record my journals. As I said, I was recording on my walk. But when I first started journaling in 2019, my journals for the first year, almost, I guess 6 months, was handwritten. And so I am taking those handwritten journals and I'm converting them to digital so I can print them in nice bound books because my handwriting sucked and I want them to have a little bit longer last, and I want them in digital form just in case anything were to happen to the physical form. And as I read my journal, I was covering April 10th to April 30th, 2019. That's what I did 2 days ago. And as I read that, I could not help but to think how proud I was of that man. I was reading about very difficult times when I worked at the lab. Our first son was to be born in a couple of months. My wife was in her second trimester and struggling. And we were in a new house. We had just moved into the house in November of 2018. So we'd only been there for a little while. I was building the basement out every Saturday, 12 to 14 hours every Saturday. And I was just burning the candle at both ends, and I was severely struggling back then. And as I'm reading it, I couldn't help but to have a profound gratitude for that man, being so proud of him going through, to that point in his life, the most difficult situations he'd ever endured. And as I read it, I could feel the pain, feel the trial, but also feel the overcoming. I can feel the movement and progression forward as I read those words that I wrote in 2019. And it was fairly impactful to me. It made me really ponder about my time today. It's cool because I can see in 2019, these are the things that I'm forecasting. And some things did come to fruition. Some things did not come to fruition. And most things took way longer than I thought it would. It's cool to look and read and also have the crystal ball on knowing what happened after. So seeing the lead up to game day and how cool that was and what was on my mind and what was going through my mind. And when I read these journal entries, most of the time I can remember that day like it was yesterday. And that's one of the powers of having intentional journals. I can record the day and I know what happened that day. And I can look back and recognize all of the movement and the hand of God in my life. And then after that, after I read those 20 days or so, I couldn't help but to think and transport myself to 2031, 6 years from now, the same gap that I had before. And in 2031, looking back on my journals from today, looking back on my time today, while I'm in today, right? So I'm not reading journals per se, I'm actually living what I'm looking back on and feeling that same gratitude for that man, the man in 2025, and the trials and the tribulations and the chaos and the calamities, the pandemonium that occurred, and having extreme gratitude, being very proud of the work that he did, that he kept going, that he kept moving one foot in front of the other, despite all odds, despite being told you can't do this, but despite so many things crumbling around. In reality, the things crumbling around were the things crumbling away because they were not a part of the story. See, that's the coolest part about looking back in 2019 and 2020 and reading these journal entries. In the moment, it feels like all hope is lost. And my biggest opportunity to date just withered away. But the reality is, all of these things are falling out of the way. They were actually causing a blockage. They were actually causing a dam to prevent me from progressing, but they got out of the way. But it took time and understanding and my crystal ball of seeing the future from that point of view to recognize that's what was really happening. It was actually God moving these mountains in my life. And I've spoken about mountains before and what would actually happen if a mountain moved. A ton of chaos, a ton of calamity, a ton of pain, a ton of death. And then watching that in my life today, it is such a blessing to be able to look back on these journals and see what I did in 2019 and then see what I'm doing now in 2025 and then project myself to 2031 and seeing how things progressed, seeing how things panned out and having extreme gratitude for who I am today and the work I'm putting in today and the things I am trudging through today. And recognizing, as I did read in 2019, saying those were the hardest trials that man had ever experienced. And I have had significantly harder trials since then, but I'm a significantly stronger man today than I was in 2019. I have more experience. I am more tempered. I am more cured because of the trials. Conversely, 2031, the trials will be larger. New levels, new devils. It will be harder. And I will be a stronger man because of the trials I'm experiencing between now and 2031. Yes, the trials that I'm experiencing now are the hardest to date in my life. It does not mean they will be the hardest of my life. As I progress, as I become stronger, I can do more. And how cool that is. And the opportunities that we have to learn. We learn through trial. I wish it would be awesome. It'd be so cool to learn from winning. You just experience, you win, and you gather all these learnings from the win. That'd be awesome. But that's just not reality. You learn a little bit from the win. You learn a ton from the learning or the loss or the failure, whatever you want to call it. I choose to call it learnings because that's what they are. They are resourceful by nature. They bring you resource. And like I said, when looking back on 2019, that trial, that thing falling apart might actually be the thing falling out of the way so you can progress forward. In this journal, I was working on what I later patented. About a year and a half later, I had a patent for what I was designing and building out of cardboard in April 2019. And when I started, I had no idea what I was doing. I knew nothing about the engineering world. I knew nothing about the latex world. I knew nothing about anything that I was doing. And I write about that. And I actually became a pseudo master in all of those aspects to the point that I ended up getting a patent with no contest from the USPTO, which is so cool. But seeing all of the steps and trials, and I actually stated in the journal that I knew that thing I was building was going to change the world. I knew it was going to get me to the financial success that I was seeking. I knew that it was going to be something that I could leave my career as an executive and then run with. What I did not know is that was merely a catalyst. I want you to think about that. I never actually did anything with that patent, at least not today. Maybe I will in years down the road when I have more funds, because that's what it requires, a lot more funds and a lot more time. But it was the thing strong enough and moved fast enough that got me to leave my career to get me to where I am today. So did it actually put me on the path to the financial success that I wanted? Yes. Is it going to change the world? Yes. Just not in the way that I perceived. I teach this to my clients quite often. If you look at my hand, for those that are watching YouTube, I'm pointing at my elbow for those that are not watching. And the path might be your arm. And you think your destination is my middle fingertip. But in reality, my destination is my thumb tip, which is not in view. It's not in a straight line sight. But I have to walk down the path of my arm to get to the fork where my thumb is in order to even see it. I can't even forecast it when I start. I could not forecast 3.5 years ago, in this case, 6 years ago, that I would be in tech, in finance, in artificial intelligence. Never could I ever have perceived that or forecasted that or predicted that. And people ask me, how are you in this space now? I kind of fell into it, quite literally. And how grateful I am and how blessed I am to have that. But it started so many years prior, building something different. I am proud of the man that I was in 2019. I'm proud of that man and the actions he took to get me to where I am today. I am proud of the man I am today, looking forward in 2031 and 2037 and 2042. I guess 2043 if I'm going by 6 years. And how many things will shift, change, adapt, mold me into who I'm becoming. I spend a great deal of time now teaching incarcerated women. I could have never perceived that in 2019, let alone that I would be a public speaker. I could have never thought that was going to be the case. At the time, I was just an executive at a laboratory spending 14, 16, 18 hours in a building with no windows. What I'm getting at is you don't know what's coming. And if you're not journaling your story, begin now, begin today. Do it somewhere, some way, somehow, and document your steps, document the path. So when you can look back 1,000 days, 2,000 days, 3,000 days, say, that's where I was. and this is where I am now. And it is impossible to not but feel so much gratitude as long as you keep walking. There are definite times where I backtracked and backslid and fell down. Absolutely. They're riddled in my journals. But overall, the progression and trajectory is up. That is what I have for you. That's what I want you to do. Smacking my mic, oops. I want you to journal. I want you to document what you're going through because it's important. If for anybody, for you. And that's the benefit of a digital journal. I can go back 1,000 days. There's an actual button that says go back 1,000 days. I can read this day for the last 6 years and see what happened on this day. Last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. Now that is a cool trend to experience. Have this conversation with your friends and your family. Share this episode. It is the only way this show grows. I'm grateful for you. Let's have a conversation. Find me on socials, Mr. Brad Draper. Like this thing, subscribe to it to download it for future listenings. Until next week, I love you guys. Bye.